Vai Brahma Tamatram Vishwam Vai Brahmatam Tamatram Samstitam Vishnumayaya Samstitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinnam Ishvarena Parichinnam Kalena Vyaktamurtina Vishwam Vai Brahmatam Matram Samstitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinnam Kalena Vyaktamurtina Vishwam Vai Brahmatam Matram Samstitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinnam Kalena Vyaktamurtina.
Vishwam Vai Brahmatan Mantram Samsitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinam Kalena Yaktamurtina Vishwam Vai Brahmatan Mantram Samsitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinam Alaya Yaktamurtina
Vishwam
Vai Brahmatan Mantram
Samstitam Vishnumayaya
Samsitam Vishnumayaya Ishvarena Parichinam
Kalena Vyaktamurtina
Kalena Yaktamurtina.
Vishwam,
Vishwam,
the material phenomenon.
the material phenomenon.
Vai,
Certainly.
Brahma,
Brahma,
the supreme.
the supreme.
Tatmatram,
Tatmantram,
the same as.
the same as.
Samstitam,
Samsitam,
situated. Vishnumayaya,
Vishnumayaya,
by the energy of Vishnu.
by the energy of Vishnu.
Ishvarena,
Ishvarena,
by the personality of Godhead.
by the personality of Godhead.
Parichinnam,
Parichinam,
separated.
separated.
Kalena,
Kalena,
by the eternal time.
by the eternal time.
Avyakta,
Avyakta,
unmanifested.
unmanifested.
Murtina,
Murtina,
by such a feature.
by such a feature.
Translation. The cosmic manifestation is separated from the Lord as material energy by means of kama, which is the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. Responsively, please. This cosmic manifestation
This cosmic manifestation
is separated from the Supreme Lord
is separated from the Supreme Lord
as material energy
as material energy
by means of kala,
by means of kala,
which is the unmanifested,
which is the unmanifested,
impersonal feature of the Lord.
impersonal feature of the Lord.
It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord
It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord
under the influence
under the influence
of the same material energy of Vishnu.
of the same material energy of Vishnu.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. As stated previously by Narada before Vyasadeva, Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Iveta, this unmanifested world is the self-same personality of Godhead, but it appears to be something else beyond or besides the Lord. It appears so because of its being separated from the Lord by the means of kala. It is something like the tape-recorded voice of a person who is now separated from the voice. As the tape recording is situated on the tape, so the whole cosmic manifestation is situated on the material energy and appears separate by the means of kala. The material manifestation is therefore the objective manifestation of the Supreme Lord and exhibits his impersonal feature so much adored by impersonalist philosophers. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripatamam Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Vedamaham Vedati Svapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindho Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Vishwambai Brahmatam Matram Samstitam Vishnumaya Ishvarena Parichindam Kalinavyaktam Murtina. The cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of kala, which is the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. The couple of things to note about this verse. The main thing I see, well, there's emphasis the last couple of verses on kala, on time. And there's one thing about time that whenever I hear the word kala, it reminds me of one of the symptoms of the stage of rati or pava as we progress in devotional service. So we go through different stages. Srila Rupa Goswami's outlined 9 different stages of bhakti in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In a purport on one of the verses in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests 14, which, as an old English professor, I find really interesting because a sonnet is composed of 14 lines. And so I thought, is there a project there? Maybe, if I lived long enough. It made me think of writing a cycle of sonnets describing or exploring maybe those 14 stages, most of which are beyond my experience, so I can only do it on the basis of what I hear from the sadhus and the shastras. But that particular symptom of bhava or rati is avyarta kalatvam. Of the 9 symptoms of bhava, this is the one Srila Prabhupada addressed most. The other that he probably addressed next most, although not nearly as many times as in my memory, I think I looked both of these up, was namagane sadaruchi, having a taste for always chanting and hearing the holy name. But avyarta kalatvam is a very, Prabhupada seemed to think it was extremely important for us to take note of. It means not having an inclination to waste any time. The devotees like to spend all their time serving Krishna. They're always looking for some more service. We've seen this over the last few days, especially, last week or so, but especially maybe since Wednesday, Thursday. Some of the devotees have just gone full bore from hours before the sun rises until hours after it sets. And it seems like we still have it going on. So that's one thing. Another thing, though, here is that kala, time, especially our experience of time, is what seems to separate the material world from the Lord. Because the big point here is that as an energy of the Lord, the material energy is actually identical with the Lord, in a sense. Because the Lord, we understand the principle of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, which means that the Lord is at the same moment both different and not different from all his different energies. So there's a sense, this is something we discussed extensively going through the second canto, but we see it coming up over and over again here in the third canto, as if the Bhagavatam is trying to utilize this stuna nikanana nyaya that Srila Jiva Goswami refers to in Paramahansa Sandarbha, this logic of pounding a post to set it more firmly. So he's trying to set this conception ever more firmly in our hearts as we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, that there isn't anything that's apart from Krishna. As Krishna says in, I think it's the last of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, anything that we see, if we see anything that seems to be separate from the Lord, that's the illusory energy at work on us. It makes it seem separate. So the analogy he draws is a tape recording and the actual person whose voice is recorded. They're the same, but they're not. When we hear, when we hear a record, just to date myself a little bit, you hear Cass Elliot singing Dream a Little Dream of Me on a record or a cassette tape, or I guess nowadays an MP3 file or whatever else there might be. You think of Cass Elliot, you think of that. She was a large woman with this amazing voice that just could melt your heart. Or any other singer or speaker. Just like when we see a recording of, say, I'm thinking of Amanda Gorman's speech at the inaugural earlier this year, her speech, her spoken word presentation, which was just, I think I must have watched it 20 times in a row. I was so mesmerized, both by the language, the images that she brought up, her cadence as she recited it, and her movement. She was just she's this mesmerizing figure. So you're there with Amanda Gorman, but she's not there. I'm looking at a screen. I'm looking at these colors dancing around on some kind of little screen on my desk. But at the same time, that's her energy, and it communicates to me, and I feel it. So this material world is not different from Krishna. We saw this very clearly. This is the oldest teaching in the Vedas, as we saw in the 6th chapter of the 2nd canto, which is called called Purusha Sukta Confirmed. And Purusha Sukta is part of the Rig Veda, which is the first Veda. So this is the oldest teaching that there is that the Supreme Lord is simultaneously identical with and aloof from everything else, all his energies. So when we think of this in terms of the material world, then this isn't pantheism. This isn't God spreading himself out through nature. But he expresses himself through this material energy. At the same time, he remains completely aloof and expresses himself in the spiritual world with his pure devotees. Srila Prabhupada, he actually cites a line from a verse in the first canto. And I thought I would read that first. I was thinking I would read the purport. I might read a little bit of the purport. But if I'm going to talk about my experience of Srila Prabhupada, and I can do it briefly, in my experience of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance here in Honolulu, I need to be smart here. So the verses, this is chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 5, text 20. And people who've been paying attention to me would probably think, oh, isn't that the one right after 19 that Swami talks about a lot? And it is the one where Narada Muni he's explaining to Vyasadeva the difference between bhakti and everything else, to point out the flaw in his service, the reason Vyasadeva is sitting there so dejected, as Narada Muni encounters in this chapter. So bhakti is unlike everything else, even all the religious processes. And even because one thing to note about the other processes is that to get real success, first of all, you have to mix in a little bit of bhakti, and you have to do them perfectly if you really want the results. Bhakti, he says in verse 19, you can blow it. You can, what we used to call bloop, right? You can fall down on your face, and still there's, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, no loss or diminution. So in the next verse he says, Idam hi vishwam bhagavan nivedo, yito jagatstana nirodha sambhava, tadhi swayam veda bhavan statapite, pradesha matram bhavata pradarshana. The Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, is himself this cosmos. That clear? Is himself this cosmos, and still he is aloof from it. Not but, still he is aloof from it. And still he is aloof from it. I just love that language. From him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated. In him it rests, and into him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows all about this. I've only given a synopsis. So Srila Prabhupada, I'll just read a couple of sentences from the beginning of the report. Oh, and then one little bit into it. Srila Prabhupada writes, for a pure devotee, the conception of Mukunda, Lord Sri Krishna, is both personal and impersonal. The impersonal cosmic situation is also Mukunda, because it is the emanation of the energy of Mukunda. For example, a tree is a complete unit, whereas the leaves and branches of the tree are emanated parts and parcels of the tree. The leaves and branches of the tree are also the tree, but the tree itself is neither the leaves nor the branches. And Srila Prabhupada says in the last paragraph of this purport, the human being and all other living beings are products of his internal energies. Thus, the living being is also identical with the Lord. So we are one with the Lord, but we are subordinate. We are small. He is Vibhu. He is the greatest. We are Anu. We are tiny, and therefore we have a tendency to become overwhelmed if we happen to come in contact with that external material energy, which is also him. But if we see it as separate from him, that's where the trouble is. So I just thought this was probably the nut, the essence of today's verse. This simultaneous oneness and difference between Krishna and his energies. I'm going to take a couple of minutes. Not cut me.
I'd like to make a suggestion, Maharaj, is that because we need to finish decorating Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa, and in your memories could be shared, more people are coming a little later. So if
Whatever you say, you don't need to make an argument. I'll take your suggestion. Thank you so much. Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam.
and anyone would like to help, is that we've got to get the flowers are there in a nice way. Rena made a plan on George to come in and orchestrate this so that we can